I'm holding the current edition of the Firearms Law Handbook.
8th edition.
8th edition, yes, no less.
She doesn't look that old, does she?
It must represent, a lot of years of experience between you two.
Yes, quite a frightening number if you add it
Well,
up.
actually, it's funny you should say that, because I was called in 1983, and Laura was put on the solicitor's roll in 1993. So actually, between the two of us, we've got 70 years' experience as lawyers.
All packed into
This year.
All packed into a book for what price?
About 40 quid
Yes.
on Amazon.
Yes, it's available on Amazon and, of course, through the publishers, Wildey,
Yeah.
Simmons and Hill. Yes.
So, Nick, what is it supposed to do? What's the point of it?
It's a legal textbook about effectively firearms licensing law. However, don't be put off by the fact that it's a legal textbook, because originally, we've only done the last 2 editions, originally it was written by a Lincolnshire solicitor, and it was really aimed at the individual shooter or the police licensing officer who wanted to understand what the basics of firearms licensing law are. And he wrote the first edition in 1969 after the 1968 Act came out. Now, our first edition took it up to 84,000 words, and I think the second edition is now 108,000.
I think so, yes.
And the next one will be even bigger, because that's going to have to cover the new statutory guidance.
Yes.
So, but it's really quite readable. The ordinary person, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand it, the ordinary person who's interested in this area can pretty much understand all of it.
Laura, if you had an ordinary person read this book and come back to you and say, this solved a problem for me?
I have had people contact me who have got in touch with me because they've seen the book advertised and they've looked things up in the book, and that's why they've then come to me as a solicitor for legal help. So yes, that has happened, and people have said that they have found it readable. We made a very concerted effort when we were writing it not to be over legalistic and to try and keep the language approachable and easy for the layman to understand. I mean, inevitably, parts of it, such as the classification of firearms, are quite technical in nature, and you have to be precise. But in as much as we could, we've tried to make it easy for your average farmer, gamekeeper, target pistol shooter, whoever it may be, to be able to read it and think, yeah, I get that, okay, I understand now what my firearms licensing officer is expecting of me and what might cause me to have problems in getting my certificate renewed.
What terrifies me about this book is it's an incredible job of work. You've done amazingly well to get it out. It is extremely dense. It is the book on the subject. And you're still married.
Yes, that's a very good point, actually. It is quite a lot of work, and of course, although we make a little bit of money from selling the book, it's you don't write anything like this for the money. I did consider changing my initials to JK, but I still don't think it would have made me much money.
No, it's never going to be on the W.H. Smith bestseller list. No, it's a special interest book. But
I think one of the things is we've actually been quite pleased about recently is several police licensing departments have asked for copies of it. And I think I would say if this book does one important thing, I hope, is it makes the shooter understand the concepts involved in firearms licensing, and perhaps sometimes more importantly, it makes the shooter, or helps the shooter, to understand why there are these requirements and really what it is that the police are doing. Because a lot of shooters start off by saying, well, thinking the police are just being totally unreasonable, why would they require any of this? And I'd like to think the book does sort of begin to explain the general policies behind firearms controls.
Do you use practical examples of cases or of...
Oh yes, we do. In the book, we give examples. For instance, we talk about the different types of situations that might result in you having your certificate revoked or not renewed, and one of the areas the police have concerns about is whether you have unsuitable associates who might be involved in criminal activity, and we've given examples in the book from real cases we've dealt with, of people who, for example, have had their certificate taken away because of who they've been friends with on Facebook, and the police not thinking that those people are suitable, and there's a risk that, if you're friends with those kind of people who've got a criminal background, even though you might not know about their criminal background, if you're friends with them, then there's a risk you might lend your gun to them, and for that reason alone, we've had instances of clients who've had their guns taken off them based on that. So yes, we do try and give examples from our experience that people can relate to. My original background is as a criminal defence lawyer, and for the best part of 25 years I was a duty solicitor both in magistrates' courts and in police stations, and I dealt with everything from murder to motoring. And then gradually, through our contacts in shooting clubs, etc., we started both doing more in the way of licensing work and appeals, and now everything I do involves firearms and firearms licensing. It's either advising people who are facing criminal investigations or prosecutions for offences relating to their firearms. But here again we're talking about certificate holders, people who on the whole have tried very hard to stay on the right side of the law, rather than violent organised crime. The people that we deal with are in the main certificate holders, and then a lot of it is firearms licensing advisory work, advising people on whether they've got grounds to appeal and doing all the preparation of the appeal case if we decide that there is a good basis to appeal.
Well, obviously, Laura and I do work a lot together, but I work for a lot of other solicitors as well, and I also work for shooters who can instruct me on direct access.
Because you're a barrister? Because
I'm a barrister, so they can come straight to me. They don't get the Rolls-Royce service that they would get with Laura, and I'm actually being serious when I say that. But if they're on a tight budget and they just want somebody to represent them in court, then that's what I do. But normally I'm instructed by a solicitor, and I actually prepare the case. I advise on exactly how we should present the case and try and put it in its best light. And then of course I actually go to court and argue about it on the day.
Right, last question, as I do think we've got minutes left, if not seconds. Writing a book with your wife is a very brave undertaking. Was there anywhere, and what was it, where you absolutely disagreed and you had to kind of fight it out?
There are certainly topics where I think one of us would have put more emphasis on it than another, or the other way round.
Yeah.
But of course the problem is, because we've been doing it together for so long and actually working on the cases together, we've pretty much got the same ideas about what's going to work. And the other thing is, we do actually, believe it or not, get on quite well with quite a lot of the firearms licensing managers and their staff across the country. I mean, Laura could probably tell you the names of nearly every firearms licensing manager in the country.
Most of them.
If you just say, Devon and Cornwall, she'll tell you the name, for example. And so it's always good to have that good relationship with the police, because it really does help.
So it's a kind of consensus-based book, isn't it, really?
It is, yes. Now, to answer your question about was there anything we disagreed on, the only thing I would say is that our style of writing is slightly different, and I think Nick writes in a way which comes from his many, many years of being an advocate in court, and quite often when we're writing and drafting the chapters, Nick would write things in a way where it was posing a question with a question mark at the end, and I would say to him, no, I think we need to change the style of that, because our readers don't want questions, they want answers. Yeah. And so we have a slightly different style, but I think it's really worked well working together, because I've edited what Nick's written, he's edited the parts I've written, and I think the finished product has turned out well.
Shall I show you the best bit of the book?
Go on.
Actually, the best bit of the book is these photographs here.
Who gets top billing?
Right. Well, this is a funny thing. Laura got there first.
And you can buy their book from Amazon. Link below.